Well, Lila Hogan has been declared the Woman of Excellence for 2013 here at the Parish Library in Amite. This is the third annual award in that category by our Parish Library. And Lila, you know, we spoke with Barry Bradford, the library director, and he says this is just a chance to give a little recognition.
Oh, well, I'm excited about it and very, very flattered and very pleased and humbled. I think it's an excellent idea to honor women in our community, and I'm proud to get selected.
In your case, at the moment, you're running for judge, but ordinarily the kind of law you practice is not likely to get the headlines. It's not the big train derailment case or the big aspirin case as we had a few years ago here in the 21st Judicial District. So you can understand why a little recognition could go a long way.
Well, I think that what I do in family law and what those of us who practice family law do is probably the most important type of law, because we're dealing with human lives every single day, families and what they go through. So to me, it's extremely important.
And the Women in Excellence recognition is only one award they have here at the library, so other groups also get their day in the sun, as it were.
That's correct. I was real pleased to see that Osa Betts Williams got an award last month with the Black History Month.
And very often, again, in your work as a lawyer, we all know lawyer jokes. My son is a lawyer, so I can tell some of the best ones. But, you know, lawyers just rarely get a pat on the back from people. That's
correct. And it's a real shame. I think one of the reasons is that advertising has taken the forefront in, and it's not, I don't think of advertising for lawyers as a good idea. When I grew up, the legal profession was something that was honored, and it was a service, and I still believe that.
Well, when you get this award, I mean, I know you're going to take it very seriously. My other son actually won an Emmy and could care less, never even showed it off, could care less about it. So maybe you'll give a little space on your mantelpiece or someplace for this award.
I certainly will. I think that this is just something that we all need to understand, that part of our responsibility is service. And if I can help other people, and if I can be a mentor to young attorneys to give more back to the community, then that's what we need to do.
You know, though, I want to point out, I can't think of less remuneration that you'd get in a type of law practice than to pick family court in Tangi Parish. In other words, if you were looking for the big checks, you'd practice just about any other kind of law, business law, criminal law, you name it, ahead of this.
Well, that's correct. I would say that family law is not one that you're going to get rich on. Certainly not.
So you obviously are not in it for the money.
No. I mean, I'm doing it because I believe in it. I enjoy it. I don't enjoy the suffering, but I enjoy helping people get through the process, enjoy helping people move on with their lives, enjoy helping people reconcile if I can help them do that.
One thing we hear too, I mean, let's just be honest, the income level here is not what it is even in, say, for example, a St. Tammany Parish. So once again, I'm sure you have to do a lot of pro bono work. I'm sure that, you don't command the big bucks practicing family law in Hammond.
I do some pro bono, all of us, all of the family law attorneys do some pro bono, and it's important. We have to do it. There's legal services, but they're overburdened and they don't have enough people to be able to handle all the cases. So all of us are doing some help for people who cannot afford lawyers.
One of the concerns I hear expressed when the legislature wants to tamper with marriage laws in Louisiana is that if they create more rigmarole, as it were, if they create more restrictions on issues like divorce, while it may sound good that they're making marriage harder to get out of, what it really means for poor folks is it makes it more expensive to go through the court proceedings.
I don't see many laws that are being developed that make it harder to get divorces. There are more confusing laws that need to be fixed, relating particularly to community property reimbursement claims. Those are difficult. What I think it should be, actually, I think it should be harder to get married, because I think people need to really think twice before they get into a marriage. And I want people to be married. I don't believe in people living together, but I want people to seriously understand that this is a commitment. A marriage is not just a wedding. This is a commitment for the rest of your life. And I'd like to see some more stringent requirements on getting married.
Whatever happened to covenant marriage in Louisiana? We hear that it really has not caught on to the extent that the original developers thought it might.
That's correct. There is a covenant marriage, and it's working fine for most of the people who have entered into it. I have seen some covenant divorces, and it takes longer to get a divorce, but there's not one of the covenant divorces where somebody walked in my office and said, I had a covenant marriage, I want a divorce. It wasn't one that those 2 years of waiting actually led to them reconciling. So the covenant marriage may help them because they're the kind of people, and their pastor that worked with them, kind of marriage that made them think twice about getting married. So it has worked in many of the cases.
You know, it occurs to me, I didn't get the details on how you were selected for this honor. Did they just call you up and say, you're the Woman of Excellence for 2013?
No, certainly not. I was nominated by Cecilia DeNoble, and then there were several...
She's on the library board.
And there were several letters of reference that were written, one by my daughters, one by Celine Short, and one by Patsy Causey. And there was an application, and just talking about my background and my service to the community. That's how I got selected.
And you've been active in the public sphere along the way.
Yes, I mean, part of the service is ranging from when I first walked into Hammond with the crisis phone to the Business and Professional Women, Mayor's Commission on the Needs of Women, the Inns of Court, the Disciplinary Board for the state, all of the bar associations, local and state, and the Law Institute, working on the new family court system for the state. First of all, I want to thank the Tangible Parish Library, Bianca, Barry, thank y'all for this award. The board, I really appreciate it. I'm very humbled, and it's a great award. I think it's wonderful to honor the women in our community and during Women's History Month for the services that they have rendered. Cecilia, thank you for nominating me. I want to introduce my husband of 34 years, who is both enduring and endearing. And my son, David Hogan, if you'll stand up or say wave. David and his friends who are all getting ready to go to Panama City, but he got them to come here. We have 4 children, 3 daughters, and David is the youngest. We have 1 grandchild. I'm going to start by reading something in the Bible. And I'm Catholic, but I grew up reading the Bible because my grandmother was Pentecostal and my mother was Methodist. So besides, every week we heard about the Gospels and the Epistles in the Catholic Church, and we read about them. But this is one I was trying to figure out. I knew there was a passage in the Bible about the exceptional wife and woman. And this is about the capable wife. She keeps herself busy making wool and linen cloth. She brings home food from out-of-the-way places, as merchant ships do. She gets up before daylight to prepare food for her family and tell her servant girls what to do. She looks at land and buys it. And with money she has earned, she plants a vineyard. She's a hard worker, strong and industrious. She knows the value of everything she makes and works late into the night. She spins her own thread and weaves her own cloth. She is generous to the poor and needy. She doesn't worry about the snow because her family has warm clothing. She makes bedspreads and wears clothes of fine purple linen. Her husband is well known, one of the leading citizens. She makes clothes and belts and sells them to merchants. She's strong and respected and not afraid of the future. She speaks with gentle wisdom. She is always busy and looks after her family's needs. Her children show their appreciation, and her husband praises her. He says, "Many women are good wives, but you are the best of them all. Charm is deceptive and beauty disappears, but a woman who honors the Lord should be praised." That is a beautiful passage. I am not that woman. Every time I read that, I'm exhausted by the end of the passage. Who can do all of that? What a woman. I didn't grow up that woman either. I grew up And there were no mentors in my life as far as women lawyers, women judges. We didn't have them back in Lake Charles in those days. I was born in '51. I'm 61 years old. But I was surrounded by strong women. These were what I call now, after I went to see the Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood, I had the Yayas in my family. Any one of these women, there were 5 sisters, and my mother and her 4 sisters, and they'd walk into the room and everybody immediately turned their eyes to them. They were beautiful, dynamic, very loud women. And they were the hub. They were the hub of their universe, and they were strong. And my grandmothers were strong. They were the basis of their families. And that's what I grew up around. Now, my mother went back to college when I was a little girl, and she took me with her. She didn't have a babysitter, so I would go to Spanish class or to the Spanish lab or to the counseling center, or wherever she went, I was tagging along. Now, my father died at age 14, when I was age 14. And that was profound. That was my turning point, because before then I was centered around the home and didn't join anything other than the orchestra. That was the only activity I was in at age 14. When he died, I could have gone one of 2 ways, and I chose the option of just joining every organization there was and service. And that's what led to it. During high school, I joined everything. And then I met by the way, I joined the Girls Athletic Association. I thought I was a future teacher. I was in National Honor Society. I went to all of the athletic events, and then I was Girls Athletic Association. Not because I was an athlete, because I wasn't, was because I found the most Coke bottles to sell, and therefore I got on the board. So I met my first woman mentor when I was in high school, and she was my high school English teacher, Virginia Strout. And Miss Strout told me that I could do something and I could help people. And I didn't realize it. She was my sponsor for my Future Teachers of America, and I was the regional president. And on the graduation day, she called me to her home and she said, "Lila, I know we've been promoting teachers and it is a wonderful profession, but you don't have the personality and you can't do it." And I said, "What do you mean? That's what I want to be. I want to be a high school English teacher like you." She said, "You can't do it. You don't have the patience, and you don't have the ability to handle the politics of our school system and our school board and the parents and their complaints and their objection over certain books you may teach. You need to do something different." And I never, ever thought of doing anything different than being a teacher. Although, I did want to be a nun when I was in the 6th grade. So I looked around and said, well, what else can I do? And this was graduation day. And I said, well, I could be a lawyer. I have an uncle who's a lawyer. And so that's what I did. I went to undergraduate school at LSU. And I immediately got involved in everything there. I was a president of the women's students. And what we did was to fight the dorm rules, the curfew. And that was my claim to fame. We got rid of curfew on women. And it wasn't because we wanted to do anything. It's just it was unfair that the women had a curfew and the men did not. So what did we do when we got curfew lifted? Linda McConnell was my friend in the dorm, and she and her roommate, Wendy Teets, it was Linda McCarter and Wendy Teets at that time, the 3 of us would go to the old gym armory, and we'd go to the handball court and we would sing while it echoed. That's what we did when we had no curfew. I mean, that was my claim to fame, as we could sing, and we did Snap, Crackle, and Pop in the gym armory. So, but we did stand up for something that we believed, which was that there shouldn't be any discrepancy between the treatment of men and women. And that was what I did. I was very active in LSU. Went to law school. There were only 8 women in my class at law school. And the top 2 members of our class were women, number 1 and number 2. I was not one of those. I was up there, but I was not number 1 or number 2, but we did very well. Today in law school, over 50% of the law students are women. So young men, if you want to meet women, go to law school. Then I was the first woman who was the clerk for the Louisiana Supreme Court Justice Al Tate. And that was a trip because he didn't know quite how to use me. I would do all this research and he'd say, well, you forgot the law in the case of such and such versus such and such in 1932, and he'd give me the site. And I'd look at him and say, why do you need a law clerk? Why do you need me? He said, oh, to laugh at my jokes. And that was my experience. I did laugh at his jokes. He was great. He was brilliant. When I started practicing Hammond, I decided the best way to get involved and to meet people was service. And so I started joining things like the crisis phone and the business and professional women. I was on the Mayor's Commission for the Needs of Women. I was in a theater group. I did everything I could. Then we started having children, and I still was joining things, much to my children's chagrin. I mean, because I was always doing service work for something else. The spouse abuse program, that was something that I was instrumental in starting. It started with legal services. I was the first director there, and then it led to actually forming its own independent group. We helped do that. We did the spouse abuse protective orders and the rape crisis manual. Those were things that I was able to do for Tangipahoa Parish. And then I was also on the disciplinary board that Cecilia mentioned, which is an ethics board for lawyers to kick out lawyers who are not doing what they're supposed to do. So I got really involved, and then the Pride, which was Patsy Causey's baby, we actually do mentoring for young basketball players, women basketball players at Southeastern. And we started a mentoring program with the Inns of Court for the new young lawyers. So those were the sorts of service ideas that we did. I strongly believe that we should make our community better. I went to law school to save the world. I'm not saving the world, but I am helping one family at a time, and it's worthwhile. It's a wonderful way of living. I remember the time in the 1980s when the parish library and the parish fire departments, their money was taken by the parish government. Parish government was broke. They didn't know what to do. Well, there was revenue sharing money that was coming through the parish government, and they just took it. And I represented a class action suit of the Friends of the Library, the Nottawabunnie Volunteer Fire Department, Loranger Volunteer Fire Department, and others. And we won. We said, this is revenue sharing money. This is earmarked for libraries and fire departments. You can't take it. And we won and eventually got all the money back. And it was a cooperative effort. The parish government worked with us. After the first initial lawsuits, we were able to get the parish government to work with us to get the money back. Judge Ford was my real mentor in this parish. He had a family court, voluntary family court. It's not a permanent one like we're getting ready to have. He needed an advisory committee to help him develop the forms and procedures for this court, and I was able to help on that. After he left, the judges decided not to do it. Now, 16 years later, after the last family court voluntary judge left and stopped it, we're actually going to have a permanent family court. And that was as a result of the Law Institute committee that studied the need for a statewide system of family courts. John Bell Edwards, most of you know him, he's a state representative, and Senator Julie Quinn sponsored the legislation. And our community, our parish, is going to have a permanent one. And the reason we need one is to stop families from destroying one another and treat families differently. We're not car accidents. We are families. And if you're going into the court system and litigation, you don't need to be fighting and destroying each other. You don't need to be destroying the children with you. That's why we need a permanent family court with somebody who understands families and the need to stop the destruction and get people in and out of the system as fast as possible. That's my current service, if you trace in different service. But the message that I'm leaving with today is that young women and men can make a difference out there. And as you grow up, and you already are old, but not as old as I am, you can make a difference in the world. I have a lot of hope. The very fact that 5 young men on their way to Panama City are in here today gives me a lot of hope. And I'm not just inspired by the women and men who came before me, I'm inspired by the people behind me. And I'll give you an example. I have a daughter, Jane, who was supposed to be here, but I don't know what happened to her. She's in law school. She's working full time. She's doing a juvenile apprenticeship and an immigration clinic. And yet she decided it was time to honor the women of the South. So she started a literary journal, which, this is the proof. It's coming out, it's Bell Journal, and I'm going to give the library enough copies for all your branches when it comes out. There's a release party in May. And it's a Southern women's literary journal. And I couldn't believe that she edited it, got submissions from all over the South. But I'm going to tell you why. And this is the system of service that goes from generation to generation to generation. She wanted to honor the Southern Belle. Now, she's in law school, she's traveled around the world with a backpack, she's working her head off, but she still embodies the real Southern Belle. And this is a quote from her introduction. "A Southern Belle is a commonly misunderstood phenomenon. We are not the fragile debutantes who evolved into stereotypes. We are resilient and wise beyond our years. We are the eyes and the hearts of the South, and the keepers of its haunting memories." This is big. This is good. This is the beginning of another generation of service. I'm really proud of her. And proud, I never dreamed it would happen. She said, "I'm going to do a literary journal." I said, okay. Thought, okay, it's another one of Jane's projects. Well, it's happening. It's real. So I see hope for the future. I'm going to end pretty soon. This is what I was talking about, the service to the community. I'd like to close with another Bell Journal entry that I submitted on behalf of my mother. My mother grew up in Maryville, Louisiana. Very strong woman. She was very different. I was about to say weird. She would sing in the rain in Maryville, running around barefoot. So people thought she was a little bit odd, but she was a wonderful woman. And she wrote poetry. After she died, she had told me that she had a burial insurance policy. So no one knew about it, so taught me what to tell people, my clients, to always let your children know where your policies are. So I decided to stay in the house by myself for a week looking for the burial policy. And what I found was poetry and writings all over, in every drawer, pinned to the walls, on the backs of envelopes. It was amazing. So that's what I did, is I collected her poetry. I'd never found the burial policy. I found something worth a lot more. And one of the things that she wrote was called Southern Woman. "I never go to a person's house that I don't remove the walls, rearrange the furniture, take out the lockers, and transplant the trees. There is one exception, my own." And I think about that and I say, well, that's a little vignette about a woman who wants to go into a person's house, and then she looks into, all of us always take a tour of the house. We've got to take a tour of everybody's house. And we get there and we say, well, if I had this house, I would move this, move this. And then I realized, as I read it more, that this was an analogy for our lives, and our lives as Southern women. It's not just about a woman going into a house. It's an analogy, it's what we do. We tour our universe. We look at our universe. We see the problems in our community and in our universe. We figure out what's wrong and how to change it, and then we do it. And that's what a call to service is. So thank you very much for honoring me today.